I'm here today with a man named Gavin, and according to your screen, it's Gavin of Normanton. Is this some theatrical thing, or is this a place? It sounds like you're going to come out with your big sword and a shield and your coat of arms.
Yeah, so I am Gavin of Normanton, and it's factual. So Normanton is where I live. It's the town. It's actually his Old English for Norman town. So although I don't walk around with a sword, I'd like to walk around with a sword, but I don't do that now.
You should get
Yeah,
yourself a coat of arms for it because it's brilliant.
I think I'll have a look into that definitely. But yeah, it's Gavin of Normanton. Yes,
I want to see that. I want to see the full hat and the suit of armor, with Gavin and Normanton. I want your shield bearer. That's what you need.
Yeah, I would. I personally, I would love to do that, but we'll see. Never say never.
No, never. Now, we were just talking about the gathering before we started this, because you've been to the gathering for a few years, and I love to just quickly talk about this. Well, not quickly, but to go into this. We were just saying, how do you describe it? But how would you encourage people who've never been to the gathering, think, I'm not going to a man's event, it's going to be like a woman's event for men, I don't want to do that, what's the point? It's awful, all that singing and Christian sandals with socks, what's going on? How would you encourage them to get to the gathering?
Okay. Well, firstly, I think the only person with sandals and socks was Nathan. I think I remember with them. But I mean, I'm next year will be my 4th year, and for me, it's amazing to get men together and iron sharpens iron, as we know, but men together really encouraging each other in a tent, worshipping God. The sound of that is phenomenal in itself. It's so moving. But personally, I like the it sounds awful, but the non-compromising message. I mean, we're in a battle, and you can either do it or you can't, and you need to do it or you won't. And for me, it's very much a case of I hear Carl and I hear the people they bring in to say, look, we've got a job to do. We're going to inspire you to do it. Go out into your own towns and just do it. And there's no other festival for me that's ever done that like the Gathering House. It really speaks to I don't want to say a tribal element to us, but certainly an element that sort of sets me up for the battle ahead.
Mm. And you were saying you're trying to get your local men's group to come along. What's the name of the group? Let's name and shame. If they're not going to be here, we can do a little plug for them. What's the name of the group?
We're basically called All Saints Men's Group, so it's part of All Saints Normanton Church. So I lead that a little bit alongside Scott. So Scott leads at Scotstoun. So we have around about 9 people. So we've worked through the CVM, the Code Life element of things. They love that. We work through John Eldridge Wild at Art. So we are in a position where the men are really searching out what it means to be a man of God, and taking it beyond the Sunday morning sermon and coming on Tuesday nights. And I'm so encouraged by those people. We have people of all ages. Myself being middle age, we've got people who are pensioners. We've also got some of the younger generation coming through as well. So for me, I had an amazing man to grow up with in my church called Alan Dinsdale. And I think the value of having a wise person to go on the walk with you and another male is something that really spoke to me. I mean, sadly, he's not with us now, but I'll never forget that. And for me, I think if I can do that for the person that's coming through and we can have a group that does that, I think we describe it as a band of brothers. And I think we truly need that in society. We need to be getting alongside each other. And I mentioned the word battle a lot, and I'm not obsessed with the military or anything. But I think we often forget that we have got a fight to fight, and the fact someone's mental health or for a man to be supported, then we do need to be around in that. It's not, I have an issue with everything's got to be on WhatsApp. It's great, but sometimes it's nice to be face to face. And I think that's what our men's group does. It brings together. So to get them to the gathering for me is an ambition. But as we and you said, how do we sell it?
Well, if you're going,
insane.
Yeah, I'm going to look at the camera. If you are going to All Saints Men's Group in Normanton, get yourself to the gathering next year, because you will not regret it. It's going to change your life for good. So do as the man says and be there next year, because Andy B says.
Thank you. And I think I'll need a coach for that now.
Yeah, well,
38C or something.
Cut it out and then, get him to watch that bit. Okay, let's get on to what we actually did come to talk about, although that's really important too.
Yep.
So you are working, let's get this right, Acorn Alternative Provision, yes, which might conjure up certain names and meanings, and sometimes names help and not. But just give us an overview. What is Acorn Alternative Provision? Sorry. What's that all about?
Yeah, it's so we now been around for 2 years. We grew out of the legacy left behind by an organisation called Transforming Lives for Good, and we work with partner schools with their students who refer a student to us. We work with them in a really small environment, a really nurturing, kind, therapeutic situations that we go through, and in the hope that we refer them back to school. So the passion for us is that people that are at the crisis point in education are not then permanently excluded or have to be sent somewhere that's out of their mainstream environment. We want to get them back in. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what we've done and always done, is that we're a reintegration program. But we do it with a partner church. So the church I've mentioned, you've got the sort of school in the partnership, you've got the church in the partnership, and you've got Acorn in the partnership. And for me, it's an amazing way of getting a young person into a calm environment, work out the problems in education, and put them back in, hopefully, with a successful plan.
See, in a sense, it's like a prevention. It's, like you're saying, when things are not going right, you can either think, well, we'll wait until it gets really bad.
Yeah.
And you, I guess, are trying to step in before we get to that stage to say, okay, well, how can we help you at this stage before it gets even worse? Because the longer it gets, the more difficult it's going to become to deal with whatever's going on, whatever the reasons are. But if you can get in earlier, all of a sudden you're preventing some of those more extreme issues to try and help people. And I suppose, in a sense, my wording would be to keep them in their normal life sort of circles.
Yeah. When you described it probably better than I did there, so well done. But I think everything you've just said is that taking them out. I mean, some people call it a step out, some people will call it a break and things. But the circles that they're in sometimes in the mainstream, and I've total respect for the mainstream systems, the teachers, they're doing an amazing job. But I think something that they can't give is time. And we've found with a lot of young people that it becomes like a pressure cooker, that they're in the same environment. The anxiety starts in the same environment. School can't change the environment. So what do you do in that situation? So to have an option for the school to say, look, can you take this person? Can we all just take a breather now, figure out what the situation is, and then put that person back in? We hope that what we've put in strategies that have worked for the young person work in the mainstream environment, and the mainstream environment accept that that's going to need to have some amendments as well. We do generally see quite a lot of success. Last term alone, we saw 4 of our students that came to us in year 11 all now going into college, that the school said were just non-attenders, so they just wouldn't go into the building. We had a student whose attendance figure, I think, 3% for that year, and went on to do their GCSEs, and then went on back into not the mainstream setting, but back into post-16. So sometimes it just takes some fine-tuning, and other times it will take a lot of reintegration and a lot of planning and a lot of discussions, but it's worth it in the end to keep somebody on a track of success, really.
Just for folks who are listening that maybe not from the UK or in the UK a bit older, year 11, what ages are we talking about? GCSEs, what sort of point in the schooling is that?
So that's your final year in your secondary education. So the year 11, you're around about 15, 16 going. It's so as in my year, you either had a choice at that point where you went into some sort of work or you went into college, really. So that's where the year 11 comes in. But we do get students in every single year of the secondary. So we might have a year 7 come to us, which is the beginning of their secondary education. So you're looking at around about 11-year-old, 12-year-old. So yeah, the wide range of I don't know what they'd call it in other places, really, because the terminology has changed for me. I still work on first school, middle school, high school. So
first year secondary, that was what I think of.
It, yeah. But that's it. Yeah, I mean, the success level of what we do sometimes differs by the year of school learning when they come to Acorn. We'll probably say to a school, if you're sending a year 11, they're probably going to stay with us for that entire school year. We'll just get them to the point where they can make choices and they're confident in themselves, that the self-esteem is built up to go into a new environment like college. And I think that's where we've had the greatest success sometimes, is that they've just battled against education for so many years, and then they just needed to take that break and then start to believe in themselves again. It can be a difficult time when a parent's constantly just getting text messages saying your child's done this, your child's not coming today, why is your child not attending tomorrow? All of the things that go through a process of communication from a school, you can find it's just so disconnect them from the family. I'm not sending my child at all because I fell out with the school, and then you've got a kid that's totally lost to the system. So again, I think we can be mediators in that as well, and Acorn does that exceptionally well. We meet with families and the school and ourselves in the same room before we accept a student, so the student can see that everyone in that room is there for them. We don't go forward unless we can get all those people in the room together. And again, I think that's a part of our success, is that they do see a package in front of them, a core group of people that say, look, you're not doing well, however that looks, but we love you and we want you to work really hard because the school's invested in this for you. We don't want to get rid of you, we want to keep you. And we are taken back by that kind of passion from the school. It would be easier for us to let you go, but we want to get you back. And that changes the dynamic then.
I guess it's easy to think, okay, we've got a mental health crisis. Younger people are getting more extremely mentally ill earlier in life. And I guess we look at spending time as well. What strategy, what can we do? Where can we throw the money to fix the problem? But actually so often, and this goes across the board, any age, a 1-year-old, a 6-week-old baby, up to an 85-year-old, 90-year-old, we all want time. We want to tell our story. We want someone who is going to take the time to listen to us. But if people keep talking at us, well, we just end up going into our shell. And if we're not struggling with issues, we can still find ourselves doing that. How much more in a school where you're under pressure? I mean, I remember the pressure at school. Yeah. I remember I can't cope with the jump from GCSE to A-level, the mental strain of the level of sort of time you have to put into that. I remember saying that I was sharing with some people, I'm not coping with this. The strain and the stress is a huge jump from GCSE to A-level. And I remember another guy saying, oh, you know nothing about pressure. Wait till you get the real world. But at 15, 16, 17, actually, you don't have the maturity to deal with some of that stuff. And all of a sudden, these simpler things, as they might be perceived by older people, they're not simpler things when you're 15, 16, 17. Hormones are changing. Life is changing. Outlook is changing. These are massive stresses. And just giving someone the time to say what they're going through.
Exactly.
It's life-changing.
Yeah, and that word time is exactly what we constantly use. And I mean, I've had times where I've sat in an office and I've been working and I've known the child to such a capacity that I know that I need to vent, and they've sat and just screamed at me and screamed and screamed and screamed, and at the end of it, I've gone, right, I'm going to go back to class now. And it's like, okay, in the mainstream environment, they can't really allow that would have a massive avalanche effect on the entire day. But because of the small environment and the fact that they know they're safe to do that, that person then believes that they can change their mindset. It takes away the pressure cooker feeling of being in an environment where there's another 30 kids watching you have some sort of a crisis. So, I mean, I think you mentioned what school like for yourself, and when I went to school, I was schooling not a qualification to my name, so I always find it's an amazing sense of humour of God that I'm now in a position where I'm helping school with their students and the school that I used to attend, which is really ironic. I used to go home. I mean, I never really got bullied, but if I were being bullied, I'd go home at 3 o'clock and it would stop. For a brief few hours, I'd watch TV or do something, I would play rugby and things, and think that bullying might start tomorrow, it might not. What we have now is a child that will go home and put a phone on, and the bullying carries on, and the bullying carries on. And I think no one's brain is designed to take in that much technology and that much information, let alone that much negativity and anxiety. And I think we have kind of got ourselves into a little bit of a position where the world just doesn't set up right. So when we say like we're easy in our day, it probably was. It was tougher in our day, and you have to toughen up. It probably was tougher in some capacity, but it did feel like you could switch off from these things. And I can't remember at 15 having this much anxiety and being concerned about the world of Instagram and concerned about TikTok and how's that going to look. And we are seeing a real issue now with the mental health, I think, not just down to technology, but certainly a world where the brain's just never switching off. There's a constant need for dopamine and a constant need. And then when they've done all that at home, we go to school and the school says, well, we don't now need you to concentrate and get through 6 hours a day of constant learning. And no wonder they kind of go, I can't deal with this. My head's not capacity to do this. And then it becomes anxiety, and then it becomes low self-esteem, and we then see that the increase of explosions. And this is kind of where we want to step in that and continue to step in, is to say, look, we just need to give you some time and disconnect. We take the phones off students in the morning. so they don't get near their phone until the end of the day. I mean, when you first do that with a new student, you think you've asked them to kind of give you £1 million. It's like, what? But the process, surprisingly, is that a student will now come in and just stand the phone in. So all our students know that they're not having it. And again, that's the programming in a positive way. I don't need it today because I'm enjoying the environment I'm in. My anxiety levels are low. I don't need to keep getting a scrolling dopamine release and seeing people like my Snapchat, whatever you call them. It's just that little changes like that in our environment that I think have really benefited the young person, really.
Okay, let's go back in time a little bit. I mean, that's Acorn, in terms of what you're doing today, that's the background of that. We'll come back to that. But what's your journey of faith? How have you ended up? I mean, you said you had no qualifications, so you like the irony of that, which I can smile with you at that one as well. But what was your journey? I mean, what's your childhood? Were you church? Were you non-church? Where does God kind of fit into your life that you're now working with? I'm guessing a Christian charity that helps people.
Yeah.
How did God get you there?
Oh, wow. So I grew up I still have a wonderful, wonderful family. My dad was a miner. I went on to be a butcher. My mum was fortunate to work to be able to stay at home. When we were older, I've got a brother, Shane, a younger brother, when she became a dinner lady when we were older. So a really nice upbringing. And the reason I say that is that I still managed to go off the rails. So my dad was a professional rugby league player as well. My brother played sports, but I really rebelled against it. I went through a phase of my idols were your musicians of the time, like Kurt Cobain, obsessed with Jim Morrison, things like that, which then led me down the smoking of lots of substances and doing lots of substances. But I think one of the things that did come out a lot of my childhood was being around rugby clubs and drink and alcohol and the normality of that. So my entire teenage years, probably from being about 14 right up to maybe 17, 18, was just an obsession of drinking on the streets, smoking, and to the point where, I mean, we found an old photograph of me when I was about 16, and I must have weighed about 8 stone or so, thin, and I wasn't eating. And for me, that was terrible for my mum and dad to see. And obviously, it was really an impact of why I didn't do well in school, because I just rebelled. And I kind of felt a little bit, I won't say hopeless, but I was just happy to do whatever. There was no plan or purpose in anything. As long as I could go out with my friends and have a drink, I would do any job whatsoever. So that became the priority. And I went on an 1830s holiday to Magaluf, and we were there. And the only way I can describe that is the film Hunger Games. You kind of survived it more than you did enjoy it. And I remember sitting on a balcony, and not coming from a church background, I don't know why I did this, but I just cried out to God on the balcony and went, I don't know if you exist. I don't know if you're there, but I can't do this anymore. I can't live a life where I'm constantly feeling this poorly, this ill, this empty. And I remember landing on the Wednesday, and on the Saturday I went out for my birthday and bumped into some old friends and sisters and brothers to the friends I was with. And a lady called Rachel with them, who's now my wife. We got talking, and she came from a church background. She attended Normanton Church at the time. We got talking, built a relationship, and I kept asking her questions. Why do you believe in this? Why do you not believe in that? X-Files were pretty big at the time, so everything was run by aliens and things like that in my mindset. And it was kind of, all the quizzing were really sort of why. And she said, the best thing you can do is go to an alpha course. So I agreed. And I agreed to go on it for the sole purpose of telling them they were all wrong and that they were being brainwashed. And I think it was by week 4 I'd kind of joined them. So it was sort of, and the way that the course ran and the welcome I received and just the questions that seemed to be answered each passing week, I just felt something in my heart say, look, you've got this now. This is what you've been looking for. And it was just a statement that if you're filling your life with things that are temporary, like alcohol, drugs, all the things that we just know fade away the next morning, then you need to put God in that place.
Mm.
So for me, that was the catalyst of me accepting Jesus into my life. And the knock-on effect of that was that I volunteered to be a youth leader. So around about age 21, 22, I went to watch a group called Rock Solid in church and just seemed to click. I'd not heard of youth work before that. It wasn't a great deal of capacity in our area that did that. So yeah, I went along, seemed to get on with the kids well, and then it became a passion. That was my beginning into the working with young people. But my faith journey is thanks to Rachel, who was now my wife, and also the Alpha course, and it's still the same church as what I attend now and work primarily in partnership with. I mean, there's lots more in that, but I don't want to go too far into that.
No, that's fine. I like hearing people's story. I like to find what's the journey you've had. And my wife and I are very different. Mine was I brought up in a church, went to church, thought this is the right thing to do, made a commitment when I was 7. My wife's experience is quite extreme against that. She was at university. She was in France. It was a very Paul on the road to Damascus, lots of spiritual stuff going on, and that was her encounter. So we have very, very almost poles apart experiences of coming to Christ. But the one thing that's the same is when we met Jesus and actually chose to follow him.
Yeah,
there's a bit of a transference period, if you like, but then everything's starting to change, and you find that peace. And like you say, you were trying to fill voids in your life with stuff that couldn't last, but actually, when Jesus came along, that didn't disappear by the morning. Clearly,
no, and the great story I always share with this is that there was such a change in myself. I had kind of started getting into sport a little bit before that. I started playing rugby and trying to look after myself a little bit better than I were. But the the catalyst, I think, because my mum and dad began to go to Alpha course as well, and then my brother went to the Alpha course, and they all became Christians. My brother went to be a great pastor of a church, and my mum and dad still attend church in a neighbouring village. But for me, I started going to a lot of Leeds United matches, and I'd always wanted to see Barcelona. And we drew, I think it was in the Champions League, it was Leeds United versus Barcelona at Ellen Road. And I missed it to go to Alpha. And my mum was like, there must be something in this. If Gavin's missing going to a game, he must really have found something in the Alpha course. So when the next one came along, I think that was a bit of a catalyst to sort of drive my mum and dad towards A, the change in myself, and B, just how much I was willing to put off to pursue God, really.
it's beautiful when you hear any story, and yours is something I've heard many times, and I love it. It never gets boring. It's always so exciting that you're going in one direction, you meet Jesus, and something extreme happens that others can see. And I hear this lot, which is really encouraging. That even your parents have said, "Why are you going to that match? This is such a big deal," because it means nothing relative to the relationship with God that you found, and that's something that is very hard to quantify, other than to hearing someone's story of saying, "This is what happened to me."
Yeah, it's amazing to say it out loud. I don't often share this story. It's when I first became a Christian, it was shared quite a lot because it was fresh. So to share this now is really quite encouraging for myself to hear it again. But it is that change. I mean, I would encourage anyone as well. I worked in a warehouse at the time, and I was a forklift driver, and they were changing even that, where people would come up and say, "You don't swear." And I didn't even know that I didn't swear anymore. It was like something had just changed in my heart, and it was like, no, not okay. And you always seem to be smiling, you always seem to be happy. And I think it's great that we can go out and use words, but I think when such a change in your life happens, and you go into an environment like a warehouse, and blokes are going, "Oh wow," and they see you then as a sign of hope sometimes, and are willing to come and talk to you because for some reason you seem as a wise man now because you've kind of given your life to God. But we forget the power of how we perceive ourselves, how we present. We don't necessarily have to say to people we go to church, and they'll still sometimes get an inkling of, oh, there's something about this guy that's completely different to the people around. So for people that are between that decision making, if you do make a decision and come to God, just go out and people will notice.
People used to say of my family when we were going through some really hard times, our neighbors said, "Every time we see you, you're smiling. How are you always this happy?" Because they'd seen some of the difficulties that had just been sort of thrown upon the family. We walked through it. How are you always smiling? Someone said it to me like a few weeks ago. says, I've just read the book. I've seen what you're going through in life. How are you still joyful and smiling? Now, I didn't have time to share with them at that time, but it's because of Jesus. That's the reason why I can smile despite what's going on, because Jesus still first loved me. And that's worth smiling about.
It is, and it links back to the work in Acorn, because we are very open that we are a Christian organisation, and the paperwork that's signed by a family is that we understand that you all are part of a Christian church, and you do still get that. Why aren't you angry about that? Why have you got so much time? I've just swore at you for 20 minutes, and you still seem to forgive me and love me. And I think that is the difference. That is what we are about. That whatever you say to me, in comparison to having God's love in my heart and knowing where I'm going, it bears its significance, to be totally honest. And we have seen lots of our young people now beginning to quiz and not be suspicious, but look and go, wow, there's something completely different about these people. They're loving, and we are told to sort of be walk as children of light. And I think they do see there's a light that comes off you that sets you apart from maybe the person that's not quite made that decision, that would join in not in the disagreements, but very much like, yeah, I'm a bit down too, and do you want to be down with me? We'll all be down. And it's that kind of, other kids need to see some hope in all this, and then I think that's something that we really do bring. I mean, our tagline is to rebuild foundations and restore hope, and I think that we can do that. All of us can do that with our faith by just being present and being the smiley one in the time of crisis sometimes.
But smiling is so important. I make a point of smiling at people, and sometimes they look a bit like I'm a weirdo, and sometimes they'll be a bit shocked and smile back. But smiling, honestly, is, if anybody's watching this right now, if you smile at somebody in a nice way, not sarcastic, if you smile at someone, look at the difference. Let somebody in at the difficult junction near where you live that no one lets anybody in, and watch that car being let in, and the difference that makes as they let somebody else in. Because that's the power of smiling, of kindness, of compassion. It's the whole point of the fruit of the spirit, because it just filters around us. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you get your job at Acorn? You've talked about your school, you've talked about your heart and passion through youth, but how did you end up landed at Acorn, now working with children?
Yeah. So when I began to volunteer as a youth leader, and it really became a passion, I came home from working at 2 o'clock in a warehouse, and then absorbing books, youth work books, just couldn't get enough. I still love the work of Mike Yaconelli, a really renowned youth leader from America, and loved his presence and the way he'd present. And it kind of became a hobby. And then the vicar of the church at the time, Reverend Don Gilks, we could see lots of young people were beginning to come through the doors, and I said, is there any chance that I could do a year as a youth leader here and make a career out of it? And I didn't know this, but I think someone had left a legacy of money to be used for such a reason and for such a purpose. And I was employed by the church to develop youth work there, and it got to a point where we attracted funding from an organisation called the Rank Foundation, and they came, visited, and they funded me to do my degree. So I went to Canterbury University on distance learning to do my youth work degree. They funded the wage, bought a minibus, and basically everything was covered for another 6 years.
Wow.
So for me, I'd compare that to I don't do the lottery, but I can imagine the elation I got is what you would get, because it was like my career's now set. And to have the things paid and the stuff I was able to do through that, has had that knock-on effect. We've now got a community group called the Well Project, which was born out of that from the street work that we did. There's so much come from it. But when the funding was running out, we looked to see how we could continue with the work that we did. And we were linked with the charity Transforming Lives for Good. We're actually called the Lighthouse Group at the time. Then it's TLG, and then it's Transforming Lives for Good. And we partnered with them because I'd done a lot of integration with schools, and I'd been into counselling sessions in schools. We'd already formed a link where education seemed to be where God was navigating us. So when we'd formed that partnership with TLG, we became a registered school, and we were partnered with them for I think 13 years, maybe 12 years, I can't remember, but a good long length of time, and built up a really good reputation. Wonderful charity, but sadly they decided that they couldn't continue the education model. So I think they had 11 centres across the UK, and they had to close those down. So we were back to where do we go now? And Andy and Jill, who are our leadership team, and a number of trustees that came through TLG, said, look, we need to continue this work. This is really valuable. And that's where Acorn came through. So I stopped working, I was made redundant by TLG, I think, of 1 week in April, and started in the same seat, in the same office, but just under a different name, as head of centre for Acorn. And that's kind of where the journey is now. But we're trying to rebuild a little bit with the same foundations of TLG, but it's difficult because we are, in some people's eyes, you started again. But that's the very, very potted history of that one.
No, that's fine. So we connected because you've got a sponsored event coming up, I'm guessing, to raise money for Acorn.
Yeah, so we're trying to sort of build a presence of Acorn, with us still being relatively new. But I like to do challenges, and last month I did one with a parent of one of our students who wanted to pay us back, James. We did a walk from York back to the Normanton Centre, which was 31 mile. But I'd already organised to do this 24-hour row as well. So this is more of a local event where the gym that our students use, Brad's gym, it's Unique Fitness. We use that on a Monday and a Tuesday and Friday for the students' PE. But the community over there, and I thought, if I love the rowing machine and I love rowing, if we could do an event that brings people into that environment and the students are seen in that environment by the town, A, it gives a positive viewpoint of them, and B, we get to raise the money, as you say, that can go into buying resources and the running costs. So that's next Friday. So I start at 12 o'clock on the Friday, the 25th. Row 50 minutes with 10 minutes off through to 12 o'clock on the Saturday dinner time. Yeah.
Nice small challenge.
Yeah. Well, the walking back from York to Normanton was harder than I ever anticipated, and I'd already kind of set up to do this. But I'm enjoying the training. I'm enjoying it's long hours, like I was saying to you before the interview. I did 7 hours on Saturday, but the solitude that comes with it, because it's very quiet. The owner of the gym will lock me in, so he closes at 2. And last week I didn't finish rowing until around about 6:30. And it's just me and a rower and a screen and listening to music, and I quite enjoy the solitude. But yeah, it's not going to be easy. I've had some advice from a couple of people that have done it, and the best advice they gave me, which is not always the most helpful, but is you're not going to be fit enough to do it, so you're just going to do it. You can. Like I think any marathon is like, any marathon will tell you, you don't go out and run 26 miles a week before you do the marathon. You get to a point where you're confident, and then you have to just do it. So that's where I am now. I think this Saturday coming, I'll do about 9 hours, and I think that's where I'll be happy.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
If people want to get involved with Acorn, but specifically with the sponsored row, have you got a website? Is there, is there a link from Acorn?
There's not a link from the Acorn site, but we're on most social media platforms. So if you just type in Acorn Alternative Provision on LinkedIn, we pop up there. I've got a page on Facebook, which is a 24-hour row, Acorn Alternative Provision, so I can share these with you, Andy.
Yeah, we'll post these with the video.
I think that's probably with regards to the rowing, but we are hoping to do a couple of things on the day. So we are hoping to film it on YouTube, so maybe the last 6 hours, so people can jump on there and make sure I'm still going.
You're doing what you said you'd do.
Yeah, exactly, and to do the finish line. I want to make sure that the video doesn't cut off like Nathan's skipping. I remember watching Nathan Blackery skip, and then it was just the camera cut off just at the celebration part. So I'm kind of edging it towards just film the last few hours, really.
Make sure you got batteries that are charged. Always good.
Definitely. I mean, it's strange, these little things. I mean, we're trying to share this as a lesson as well to our young people, that with there's value in preparation and there's value in perseverance, and it's all the P's. You know, I mean, purpose, preparation, and perseverance. The big things for them to learn. You know, I mean, if we can get them prepared and they're prepared themselves to get into school, then it's the perseverance that's going to get them through to the end. And those strategies that you've put into your own life, and we do it ourselves with the Bible, don't we? We sit and we learn the things before we go out into the day. And hopefully we've taken in what Jesus wants us to do. And I think if we can put a value into what a 24-hour row means to me, but transfer it to a young person to say, look, anyone can do this. It's just easy to transfer it into other parts of your life. Don't stop, don't give in. It might hurt, but you'll feel better at the end. And the outcome will be a lot more positive than you would have if you just go, I can't be bothered, I'm not doing it. Yeah. So there's lots of reasons behind why I'm doing such a ridiculous length of time.
Fair enough. I'd like to lose to the end, but if people want to find out more about Acorn, to get involved with you, whatever, what's the website for that?
See, it's one of those things with the website I don't usually use myself.
No, I know what you mean. That's why we've got a simple one, pure247radio.org. I can remember that. I still have my little laminated card above the monitor because when I forget.
It's www.acornap.org.uk.
acornap.org.uk. Okay, we'll link to that as well when we put this out. Thank you, Gavin of Normanton. I'm looking forward to maybe meeting you at the gathering next year. Christian Vision for Men, get yourself booked into the gathering if you're over 18, or you'll be over 18 by next year. It's an 18+ event for guys. It's brilliant. Get yourself there. And All Saints Normanton, make sure you book your tickets because you will regret not going.
Too right.
Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Take care. You too.
Bye-bye.